right, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Let's go ahead and get started with your do now for today. 3 minutes. So what's one song you'll always remember the words to? Your answer in the chat. And then what does the quadratic parent function look like? That's your first share out loud do now question. And how do A, H, and K transform a graph? That's your second share out loud. One more minute. All right, first question. What does the quadratic parent function look like? What does the quadratic parent function look like? What do you have for me, Jaden?
I don't know.
What is the shape?
What'd you say?
What does the shape look like?
Like a UV?
It's a U, yeah. It's called a parabola. And then, Jaden, do you remember where the vertex was for the parent function?
Is it 0, 0?
Yep, good. So parent function is a parabola, and the vertex is at 0, 0. Good job. All right, how do A, H, and K transform a graph? How do A, H, and K transform your graph? What do you have for me, Nick?
Wait, what did you ask?
Question number 3, how do A, H, and K transform a graph?
H and K is that's the vertex, right?
H and K is the vertex. What does the H value do to my graph? How does it move it?
It moves it left and right.
What about K?
It moves it up and down.
Good. And then what about A?
That's like which way it goes, like the decimal or whatever it's called, the graphing points.
Yeah, so it tells you if A is positive, it goes up. If A is negative, it reflects, so it faces down. And then if A is bigger than 1, it's going to be a stretch. If A is less than 1, it gives you a shrink. So A tells you whether there's a reflection, whether there's a stretch, and whether there's a shrink. Good. Any questions about 2 or 3? All right, let's go ahead and do good things. Today's good things are going to come from Fresalam, Jonathan, and Natalie. So Fresalam, what's your good thing?
I didn't have that much homework yesterday.
Woohoo! Did you get to enjoy your time doing something else?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Jonathan, what's your good thing?
I get paid on Friday.
Woo-woo. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And then Natalie, what's your good thing?
Tomorrow's my brother's birthday.
Woohoo! How old is he turning?
I don't know.
You don't know. Is he older or younger?
Younger.
Gotcha. Cool. My good thing is that my roommates and I watch a show called Love Island, and they just premiered the US version this week. So we're going to watch it tonight. I'm very excited about it. Love Island is like one of my favorite TV shows. It's going to be a pretty good day. I'm excited. All right. Any questions on the homework from last night? Okay, so just as a reminder, that is due tonight at 11:59. Also tomorrow we do have early release. So if you have not gotten a picture or communication about the schedule, here it is. Feel free to take a picture of that, screenshot it, whatever. Tomorrow you'll be logging into this class at 9:09. So a little bit earlier than normal.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the equation that you put down on the notes like at the very beginning that we use like to solve the problem?
To solve the what, sorry?
Like the fx equals, what was that equation?
F of x equals a, parentheses, x minus h, close the parentheses, squared, plus k.
Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started with today's notes then. There's 2 pieces of paper that I put up on Canvas for you. So one was the Graphing Quadratics cheat sheet. So that's gonna be really helpful for you because this unit has a lot of formulas and information, and sometimes it's hard to memorize all of that. And I don't expect you to memorize it, but you should be able to easily find it. So this cheat sheet goes over all of the different formats that we'll talk about for quadratic equations. So today we're going to be focusing on standard form, which is this column, but tomorrow we'll be doing vertex form, so this column, and then the day after we'll do factored form, and then I'll put them all together and ask you to be able to differentiate between them. So it's really helpful if you have this cheat sheet available just to quickly refer back because there is a lot of information. Any questions before we get started? The second thing you'll need is the standard form notes. So that's also up on Canvas. We're going to be focusing on standard form today. All right, so here we've got a quadratic function. Here we've got a quadratic function. All the notes that are on standard form are also on your cheat sheet. So it doesn't matter where you look to find the information. They're both the same. I'm going to look at the cheat sheet just because I think it's easier, but it's up to you. All right, the important features of a quadratic function. We already talked about this point right here, which is called the vertex. We talked about that yesterday. But some other things that we're going to talk about today is the axis of symmetry, which is a straight line that goes straight through your vertex. And I can abbreviate it as AOS, which is axis of symmetry. Another important feature of a quadratic function is the y-intercept. So wherever this graph will eventually end up crossing the y-axis, that's your y-intercept. Where it crosses the x-axis, those are your x-intercepts. And your vertex is also going to be a maximum or minimum depending on which way your graph opens up. So for example, if your graph opens up like this, like a smiley face, that means your vertex is the lowest point, so it's going to be a minimum. But let's say that your graph opens up downward, so it looks like this. That means your vertex is going to be at the top, it's the highest point, so this would be a maximum. So it kind of depends on which way your graph opens up. If it opens up, it's a minimum. If it opens down, it's a maximum. And those are the key features of a quadratic function. Any questions so far? All right, let's go ahead and get to it. So we're going to go ahead and graph equations in standard form. So standard form is f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. The a is the number in front of the x squared, the b is the number in front of the x, and the c is the constant. So this is what we call standard form. You may have seen this in Algebra 1 when you were talking about like factoring or quadratic equation, all those good things. We always have it in standard form. So it's a little bit different than the formula we learned yesterday, which was vertex form. This is called standard form. All right, let's go ahead and flip to the page. I'm going to get into this from the cheat sheet, so we'll go over this information as we go through our example. All right, so we've got example 1. We need to find the following information. We need to find the vertex. We need to find the axis of symmetry. We need to find the y-intercepts, and we need to find whether it's a maximum or minimum and give the value, and then we need a graph. So quite a bit of tasks we have ahead of us. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to skip and go a little bit out of order. I'm going to find the axis of symmetry. So if you look at your cheat sheet, in standard form, to find the axis of symmetry, you have to use the formula negative b over 2a, negative b over 2a. So sometimes I actually think it's helpful before you even start your problem to identify what your a, your b, and your c are. So your a is the number in front of the x squared, so it's 3. The b is the number in front of the x, so it's negative 6. And the c is the constant, so it's 1. Questions on how we got those values? So the formula for axis of symmetry is x equals negative b, so the opposite sign of b. Since b is already a negative, the opposite of negative is a positive, so you have positive 6 over 2 times a, which is 3. Questions so far? All right, 2 times 3 is 6, so 6 divided by 6 is equal to 1. So your axis of symmetry, you always have to include the x equals because it's a line, and it's equal to 1. Are there any questions about how we got axis of symmetry? So you always have to use this formula to find the axis of symmetry. All right, the next thing we're going to find is the vertex. So to find the vertex in standard form, you need to plug in the axis of symmetry into the equation to get the y value. So plug in the axis of symmetry into the equation to get the y value. So your axis of symmetry is 1, so you're going to plug it in for x to get your y value. So it's going to be 3 parentheses 1 squared minus 6 parentheses 1 plus 1. Any questions about how we plug that in? All right, so take out your calculator. We're going to do 3 parentheses 1, and then you're going to square that minus 6 parentheses 1 plus 1. And that's going to give us -2. So your vertex is 1, comma, -2. So the 1 comes from the axis of symmetry, the -2 comes from what you plugged in. Questions so far? All right, the next thing we have to find is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is where your graph is going to cross the y-axis. So in other words, your x is always going to be 0 when you find the y-intercept. So your x will always be 0. And then we have to plug in a 0 into the equation to get the y value for the y-intercept. So if we plug in zeros for x, you'll notice that these two terms will disappear and all that's left is the constant. So the shortcut to find y-intercept when you have standard form is going to be the point 0, comma, whatever your c value is. So in this case, your c is 1. So it's going to be 0, comma, 1. Questions on part C? All right, part D, we have to decide if it's a maximum or a minimum value. So that's all dependent on whether A is positive or negative. So my A is +3. So from my cheat sheet, it says that if my A value is positive, I'm going to have a minimum. So I'm going to circle the minimum. If my A value is positive, then I have a minimum. The value of the minimum is the y value of the vertex. So I go back to my vertex and I see the y value is -2. So that's my minimum value, -2. Questions? All right.
Wait, can you say again? -2.
It's just the y value of the vertex.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and graph this. So you want to graph the 2 points. So let's start with the vertex. We've got 1, -2 as your vertex. So that's your first point. And then plot your y-intercept, which is at 0, 1. The last thing that you're going to graph from this information is the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is a straight line that goes through 1 and also crosses through the vertex. So I'm going to do that in green. It's just a straight line that goes through x equals 1 and also goes through the vertex. You need at least 3 points to finish your parabola. So I've got 2 so far, but I can get the third one by just reflecting this point over the axis of symmetry, because the axis of symmetry divides your parabola exactly in half. So you can take this y-intercept, which you know is to the left 1, and if you just reflect it to the right 1, you'll get your third point. And then you can connect those together to make your parabola. Are there any questions about number 1?
What did you just do?
So all you do is you take that 0, 1 and you just reflect it over the green line. So it used to be left 1, but now I just move it over right 1 and that will give me my third point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, so I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to ask you all to help me out with number 2. So we've got y equals 1/2 x squared minus 4 minus 2. First question, we're going to identify the A, the B, and the C. The A, B, and C. All right, what's going to be my A, what's going to be my B, and what's going to be my C? What do you think, Henry?
Your A is going to be 1/2. Your B is going to be 4.
-4.
And your C is going to be 2.
-2.
Yeah, -4. And then your C is going to be 2.
All right, let's go ahead and find the axis of symmetry first. So we're going to skip a little bit ahead, and we're going to find the axis of symmetry. How can I find the axis of symmetry? How can I find the axis of symmetry? What do you think, Conrad?
The formula is negative b over 2a. So you will plug in positive 4 over 2 or over 2 times 1 times a half.
Perfect. Yep. So change that -4 to a +4 because the formula is negative b. So since it's already a negative, you just have to change the sign. And then 2 times 1/2, you can do that in your head. You can do it in a calculator. If you're going to do it in the calculator, you're going to do 2 parentheses 1 divided by 2 to get the 1/2, and that's going to give you 1. So 4 over 1, which is equal to 4. Don't forget, when you write axis of symmetry, you need to have the x equals. So it's x equals 4. All right, now that you have the axis of symmetry, how can we find the vertex? How can we find the vertex? What do you think, Christian?
You would do I don't know.
Well, let's look at our cheat sheet. What does it say, Christian, to find the vertex?
It says plug in axis of symmetry into equation to get y value. Axis of symmetry equals y value.
Yeah, so your point is going to be the axis of symmetry y value. So what was our axis of symmetry?
It was 4x equals 4.
It's just x equals 4. So we're going to take that 4 and we're going to plug it into our equation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so we've got 1/2 4 squared minus 4 times 4 minus 2. So we're going to plug that into our calculator. So parentheses 1 divided by 2. Parentheses 4 squared minus 4 parentheses 4 minus 2. And that's going to give us -10. So your point is the axis of symmetry as your x value, so 4, and then whatever you got when you plugged it in is your y value. So it's 4, -10. Any questions about how to find the vertex? All right. What's my y-intercept going to be? What's my y-intercept going to be? What do you think, Bo? What's my y-intercept going to be? Well, what does my cheat sheet say for y-intercept?
0 and C.
Yep, so what's my C value, Bo?
Okay. 1? Wait. No. -2.
Oh yeah, -2, yeah.
Sorry.
Wrong problem. Yes, 0, -2. So your y-intercept is always 0, whatever your C value is. Does that make sense, Bo? Cool. All right, the next thing we're going to do is the maximum or minimum. So do I have a maximum or do I have a minimum? What do you think, Elise?
Minimum?
I agree with you. Why do you say minimum?
I don't know.
Well, what does it say over here for maximum and minimum value? It depends on your A value. So Elise, is your A value positive or negative?
Negative. I meant positive.
Positive. So if A value is positive, you have a minimum. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, and what's that minimum value going to be? What's that minimum value going to be? What do you think, Anam?
-10
And how did you know that?
because it's the y value
Of the,
vertex.
yes, so it's the y value of the vertex. Good job. All right, let's go ahead and plot these points. So I'm going to start with the vertex. It's at 4, -10. It's going to be slightly off your graph. That's okay. Just guesstimate it. And then plot your y-intercept, so at 0, -2. The last thing you're going to do is draw your axis of symmetry. It's going to go through x equals 4 and go through the vertex as well. So you have 2 points. You need at least 3 points to graph. So you're going to take this y-intercept and you're going to reflect it over the x or the axis of symmetry. So this is 4 units to the left. So I'm going to take that and go 4 units to the right. And there we go. Any questions on part E?
So I'm still confused with how you got -2 on the y-intercept.
How I got -2 on the y-intercept?
Yeah.
It's always 0, comma, whatever your C value is. So your C value is -2. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Can you go over the maximum and minimum again?
Yeah, so it's all dependent on your A value. So if your A value is positive, you're going to have a minimum. If your A value is negative, you're going to have a maximum.
What's the A value? Okay. And then how do you get the number? It's just the A value?
It's the Y value of the vertex. It's the Y value of the vertex. So your vertex was 4, -10. So the Y value of the vertex is -10.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and flip the page and we'll try number 3 together before I send you off to do number 4 on your own. All right, number 3, we've got y equals x squared plus 2x minus 1. So go ahead and give me my A, my B, and my C. What's my A, B, and C? What do you think, Ida?
Your A is 1.
If you don't see a number, you know it's 1.
And then your B is 2. And your C is -1.
Good. How do I find axis of symmetry? How do I find axis of symmetry? What do you think, Jonathan?
Is it 2 -2 over 2a? 2 parentheses 1.
So it's -b over 2a. So since you have a +2 for your b, it's going to be -2 over 2 times a, which is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. So it's -2 over 2, which simplifies to -1. So x equals -1. All right, now that I know my vertex is -1, how can I find now that I know my axis of symmetry is -1, how can I find the vertex? What do you think, Gavin?
I didn't hear the question.
Now that I know my axis of symmetry is -1, how do I find the vertex?
You just plug it back in.
So everywhere you see an X, you're going to plug in a -1. It's important that you put parentheses around the -1, especially if you're using the calculator. Otherwise, you're not going to get the right answer. So it's going to be parentheses -1 squared plus 2 parentheses -1 minus 1 gives you -2. So your vertex is the axis of symmetry, so -1, comma, whatever you got when you plugged in the axis of symmetry. So -1, -2. What's my y-intercept going to be? What's my y-intercept going to be? What do you think, Noah?
0, -2.
0, comma, it's your c value. So what's your c value?
-1.
0, -1. Do I have a maximum or do I have a minimum? Do I have a maximum or do I have a minimum? What do you think, Imani?
You have a minimum.
Uh-huh, and how did you know that?
Mainly because it's a -1.
No, remember your minimum is dependent on your A value. So your A value was +1. So if A is positive, you have a minimum. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then what is that minimum value going to be? What is that minimum value going to be? What do you think, Natalie?
I don't really know.
So if we look at our cheat sheet, it says the minimum value is the y value of the vertex. So what's the y value of the vertex?
-2.
All right, let's go ahead and plot then. So start with your vertex. So your vertex is at -1, -2. Your y-intercept is at 0, -1. And then you're going to draw your axis of symmetry through x is equal to -1. Should go straight through the vertex. And to get your third point, you're going to reflect that y-intercept over the axis of symmetry. So you're going to the right one. This time you're going to the right one to get your third point. And I know they're kind of close together. Do your best. On Big Ideas Math, it's kind of nice because once you plot your 3 points, it will automatically draw the line for you. So you don't really need to worry as long as you get the 3 points. Any questions about that? Any questions? Okie dokie. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to put you into groups of 2 to 3 to work on number 4, which is -2x squared minus 8x plus 1. I want you to find all parts A through E together with your group, and then I'll call on a group to share their answers out loud. Make sure that when you're in your breakout room that you're unmuted and that you're talking to each other. I hate going into a breakout room and everyone's just silent with their video off. That's not fun for anyone. I'm going to give everyone, let's say, 6 minutes to get this problem done in your breakout rooms. Does anyone need this screen before I switch you or break you up, because you won't be able to see this screen once you're in your breakout room? Okay, off you go. Enjoy. I'll call you back at 9:59. For Salam and Tia, make sure that you join your breakout rooms. Any questions?
I don't have any.
Any questions?
For AOS, it's -8 over 2 parentheses minus 2, right?
It's negative b. So since you already have -8 as your b, make sure to change it to a +8.
So is it just 8 over 2 -2?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Any questions so far? You guys good? Any questions? No? Sweet. Any questions, y'all?
Nah.
No, we're good.
Yeah.
Equation to get the y value. So you will be plugging in a -8 to all the x's. Yeah,
How's it going, y'all?
that's good.
What'd you get for the axis of symmetry?
-8. Got a -8.
Go back and check that, because remember the formula is -b over 2a, right?
Yeah, but since he said first, since he got the b was the negative already, so when you turn that to a positive,
Yeah, so it's +8
already
over 2 times a. What's 2 times a?
-2.
So 2 times -2 is?
-4.
So what's 8 divided by -4?
-2.
Yeah, so that's what you should be plugging back into the x.
all right. Oh, okay. So you plugging in all the in a -2s.
Otherwise, good job. I like the conversation.
Yeah.
How's everyone doing? Any questions?
Good. Good.
I mean, I'm just kind of like, I need help with the graphing part.
So did you get A through D already?
Yeah.
So what did you get for your vertex, Imani?
2 and 8.
What'd you get for your axis of symmetry?
-2.
Okay, so that's correct. So when you plug in a -2, you should get 9.
Yeah, I got -2 now.
Oh, so that should be the axis of symmetry, 9.
So the axis of symmetry is -2. You are correct, but I think you plugged it into the equation wrong, because when you plug in a -2, you should get +9. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's probably
So it
what,
should be 2 and 9.
-2, 9. That's probably why your graph is not coming out right. Any other questions? Any questions over here?
No.
No. Do we leave class?
No, we're gonna go back to our main room and go over the answers.
Okay.
All right, I think we have most everyone back. If you would like to volunteer your group's answer for number 4, go ahead and type in me in the chat and I'll call on you. So if you want to volunteer your answer for your group, go ahead and type in me. No one's feeling, okay, we got Ida. Great, perfect. Ida, what do you have? Share A through D.
So for the axis of symmetry, I got -2. Then for the vertex, I got -2, -2. And then for the y-intercept, I got 0, then 1, 0, 1. And then for the maximum and minimum, I got maximum, and then the value I got was -2.
Okay, so almost. The only thing was I think you plugged in your axis of symmetry incorrectly because you should have gotten 9 when you plugged it in. So the vertex should be at -2, 9. Also going to change your maximum value. But other than that, everything looks good. Any questions about number 4? Okie dokie. All right. Does anyone still need this before I change the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I'm good.
Anyone else still need it before I change it? All right, so here's your homework for tonight. You have the current big ideas assignment, which is 2.1 part 1. That's going to be due tonight at 11:59. And then you have 2.2 part 1 due Thursday at 11:59. Also, for your matrix word problems, if you haven't turned those in, make sure you turn them in by tonight because I'm going to post the answers on Canvas so that you can check your work. And I'm not going to take late work after I post the answers because you'll have all the answers. So that wouldn't be very fair if I allowed late work after I already posted the answers. So for that particular assignment, if you're turning it in late, make sure you turn it in by tonight because tomorrow I'm going to post those answers. All right, that's all I got for you. Tomorrow's early release, so I'll see you at 9:09 tomorrow. Feel free to log off. If you have any questions, I'll stick around until the end of the period.
Do you teach Algebra 2X?
I don't know. It's just Mr. Milan and Mr. Giordano.
Okay.